on the line. When you siphon value out of the Irish economy by unfairly seeking lower production costs in other countries and paying them a low wage even relative to their own country, you create a pocket. And that pocket allows big businesses to charge less than they should be to support the Irish economy. What I mean by that is, if you charge people less than what it would cost to produce that thing in Ireland, you're not reflecting fair operating costs to sustain the minimum wage. So the minimum wage has to be a reflection of what it would cost to produce that thing in Ireland and the ability to buy it. Have you understood what I've said? Tesco's price on a product has to reflect what it would cost to produce that in Ireland. If it can be produced in Ireland, but Tesco's benefiting from another nation's lesser valued currency is not acceptable as an opportunity to give a price to the Irish people which is less than will support the Irish economy. So, what has to happen? You have to increase minimum wage in Ireland. You have to incentivise business in Ireland, which they're not doing. They're incentivising other businesses from other countries to come into Ireland based on the tax incentives relative to their own countries. So you've got this whoring of nations. One nation going over here to exploit that relatively cheaper thing, and another nation coming over here to exploit that relatively cheaper thing, like paying less tax, or over there we go to pay less wages to the factories. And you've got these countries raping each other's people, which establishes the global conglomerate and the elite centrally in society. And companies like Tesco and all of these companies, they're owned by mother companies. They're owned by umbrella corporations. And umbrella corporations are the heads of all of these little companies, so that you think there are lots of different companies. No, there aren't. All these companies are bought up by few heads, and these few heads are controlled by the devil. They're Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, all the families, the central banking global conglomerate. By the way, we don't live on a globe, but we'll continue just for the sake of representation. So all of these entities own these companies. And if they don't own them, they have a chokehold on them, which is the same thing as owning them. So when you realistically look at your economy, whilst the young man is saying, well, if you increase minimum wage, you increase these businesses' ability to overcharge you again, because they know they'll put their foot on your neck. Greed will show its head, and they will increase their prices because they know you've more to spend. And if that were the case, why are Tesco reducing their prices? They're reducing their prices because they know people don't have enough money to spend on the basis of a low minimum wage. And this destroys our nation, its economy. Why? Because you're forced now to seek, or not employment, but you're forced to seek a place to produce something in other countries to avail of paying the labour force less. Because less minimum wage means less money in Ireland, in general. Doesn't it? Of course. Less minimum wage means less money in the economy, means you're forcing businesses to source production in other countries, which plays right into the hands of the conglomerate who want to control you, because they're integral in all of these international relationships. So what I'm saying is, Ireland, take your sovereignty back, produce things locally. Now, this is the thing. So the young man said, okay, well, you're going to increase inflation, blah, blah, blah. No, you're not. So how do you avoid increasing inflation? How do you avoid people ramping up the price of something? The price of something has to reflect the cost of production. Right? But minimum wage has to reflect the cost of living. The cost of production of something in Tesco does overall reflect the price, and the price does overall reflect the cost of living. But there's a big gap between the cost of doing your shopping in Ireland and the cost of living in Ireland, relative to how much the cost of shopping impacts your overall living costs. Because the cost of rent is out of control. Why? Because you're not sourcing at home, because you're going out of the country, because it's very difficult to pay your labour force in Ireland and compete. So as long as you're sourcing out of Ireland, and I think Donald Trump might have made this point actually, and they've just upped their minimum wage to 20 euros in America. So I think they've understood the problem. If you keep going out of country to source labour, you squeeze local businesses out of operation. And that plays right into the hands of those who want to enslave you. You become a sojourner in your own country. So there's a bit to it. But even as it stands, the minimum wage in Ireland is far away from covering the cost of living in Ireland. Even while companies like Tesco are undercharging, and they are undercharging, but they're exploiting the ability to bulk buy and charging way less on account of their bulk buy. That's not right. You shouldn't be charged any less for buying in bulk than you are for buying a lesser amount. There's no logic in that. That's actually exploiting somebody's inability to sell their product. It's like, Johnny's gone in to produce some potatoes. Let's leave Johnny with his spuds there till they're about to go off, and we'll offer him something then. We'll put him over the barrel before we'll offer him a price. Absolutely pig conduct. Pig conduct. You have to offer the man the going rate for what he's producing. Not put pressure on him so that he just wants to sell them all quick before he ends up with a whole lot of rotten potatoes. So currently, and just to give you an idea, a potato farmer in Ireland needs to charge about €3-4 for a kilo of potatoes in order just to run and operate and feed his family and profit a little. Because remember, they have to reinvest in the company. So the point I'm making is, if it costs him €3-4 a kilo, and that has to be his end price, and Aldi are charging €1.39 for a kilo of potatoes, does that mean Aldi should up their price to €3 and leave your man out in the cold? No. What it means is the Irish person should be getting enough minimum wage to be able to afford the local guy's potatoes. And he should be encouraged to buy them. The Irish man should be encouraged to buy the local man's potatoes. But how many people do you know can actually go out their door now and go to the local veggie guy and get potatoes and all that for the week or for the next 3 days, and then buy again in 3 days for the rest of the week, to make sure that everything's, in good order? How many people do you think can do that? Afford to do that? Double the cost of their vegetables for the week, just to buy locally. How many people do you think can do that? Most people by midweek are in the clearance aisle in Tesco trying to see what they can get as a deal. Because it's about to be thrown out anyway. I wonder how much waste these companies actually have. It's not about money, it's about control and enslaving the nations. And they're effectively going about it. So if you don't fundamentally understand economy, which this young man didn't, he had some understanding, but it wasn't complete. At least he didn't communicate that it was complete. And that's a problem. Because as Irish people, as any nation, you need to understand your worth. If you don't understand your worth, you don't know when somebody's enslaving you. And in order to understand your worth, you have to understand economy and the cost of building infrastructure. Now in Ireland, there's not enough focus on building houses. That's why there's a lack. In Ireland, there's not enough focus on training men to be able to build houses. City and guilds, incentivisation of people going about getting a craft and the ability to build their house, that's all integral in society. It has to be an ongoing incentive. It has to be an ongoing encouragement and scheme within the systems within the government to encourage city and guilds, craftsmen, young craftsmen, builders, tradesmen, people who are strong, they build themselves up and they're strong to be able to continue building, and then they can train somebody else and take on apprentices. And they have to be encouraged to stay local, and they have to be encouraged to remain in Ireland, so that other people in other nations don't just hire all our good guys and give them a better life, our well-trained men. So what you have to do is you have to ensure that you create an economy and a culture that supports the continuance of the building of infrastructure in Ireland. And if you haven't done that, if you don't do that, you're not qualified to be a politician in Ireland. You're not qualified to have an office in government. If you haven't understood the basics of what it takes to build infrastructure and sustain it, to build economy and sustain it, you're not qualified to do the job in Ireland as a politician or as a minister for finance or agriculture or anything like that. Because these different departments, though they are separate departments, have to work together to keep the country ticking over. And they have to understand one the other. Agriculture needs to know how much money they need for R&D, but they need to know what they should be researching and developing. They know where they should know where their attentions need to be to support the economy. So you can't separate, people say stay in your lane. Yeah, but if you separate people out too much, you create opportunity for the guy in the mix to manipulate these people individually to the ineffectiveness of the implementation of their department. So these departments, yes, they're separate departments in an aspect, but they're also not separate departments in another aspect, where they need to understand each other and work together. So what I'm saying essentially is home production needs to increase in Ireland. What you pay people elsewhere in other nations also needs to increase to reflect, or more closely reflect, what you would pay them if they were working in Ireland. You want to help other nations, Ireland? Pay them fairly. It is a fair day's pay where they live. Well, you want to keep them in poverty? Is that your plan? So what you're paying them should be reflecting what you'd pay an Irishman. That doesn't mean you pay an Irishman less. Then we'll support economy. So there has to be a comprehensive assessment of what it costs to support Irish industry. That's the key. Support Irish industry. And then you truly understand what the minimum wage has to be. So to do. And once you've done that, when you've increased the minimum wage, you also have to cap what businesses can charge for their product. So there has to be an ongoing assessment of cost of production so that the price, or the end price that the customer has to pay, reflects the cost of operation so that nobody is getting injured in industry. And everybody's afloat. Then and only then does your research and development matter, because you've gotten the basics right. See how simple it is? So minimum wage has to cover all aspects of society. All rational, reasonable, logical and functional implementations of pricing. Pricing has to be reassessed. Because only when you've got pricing right do you truly know the cost of living. And once you've understood the cost of living, then you implement the minimum wage, which has to equate to gainful employment. You can't just arbitrarily pick a number out of the air. Oh, 12.70 sounds good. We'll do that. The minimum wage has to cover the cost of living, or it is larceny to state it as the minimum wage. The amount has to cover cost of living, or it's larceny, grand larceny on the side of the government to claim that it's minimum wage, which is the least lawful amount somebody can be paid. Why do I say this? Because under the Constitution of Ireland it says that the man's wages should cover the woman's ability to stay at home and raise the children. And if it doesn't, well then what? What have you got? You've no house. You've no country. If you have no house, you've no country. So you're merely sojourning in the land. You're merely a slave that's not even getting paid as a slave. You become less than a slave in your own country. You're a prisoner in your own country. It's an open concentration camp. The only difference is you're well fed and well dressed. You do not have sovereignty. You are a slave. You're a prisoner if you don't have gainful employment. It's as simple as that. So going to China and paying the Chinese lad absolute pittance, grossly underpaying him just because he's poor, is scum. When you're opening up your doors to let refugees in and claiming you're a charitable nation, donating here and there and there. Just pay lads what you should be paying them. Because what you pay a lad has to reflect what you'd pay a lad in Ireland, and then surely they'd pay Irish lads to do the job. Maybe they wouldn't, because Irish lads aren't good enough to do the job. They haven't learned, they haven't kept their skills. So then the Irish lad is incentivised to get back to work. Oh, people are in investment in IT and online sales. Where's your infrastructure? You don't have enough houses. You don't have enough farms to feed yourselves. Where's your skilled workers? Where's your craftsmen? Where are your new farmers? Where are your veggie farmers? It's all livestock for export. That's only a few people getting rich. We need many, many farms functioning well, feeding the Irish people so that we can be self-sufficient. Because if you have, even if you increase the minimum wage and you don't build industry, you only have the illusion of self-sufficiency. You've got to get back to skilling Irish people. Because you're either skilling them or killing them. You can't do both. You have to skill Irish men to build their house. You have to. Even within Ireland, they're contracting lads from up north to come down south and do jobs. Again, siphoning money out of the economy. Those lads are going to go back up to the north of Ireland and spend that money. It's constant and it's deliberate. They're trying to impoverish and enslave this nation. Why? Because the mechanism is reflected in every operation. They have franchised this siphoning mechanism out through all industry and through all industry relationships. It's all a siphoning effort. Get value out of the economy. Get value out and we'll get control. Because if the Irishman doesn't have the ability to sustain his own house, we're in charge. We have him like this. Please, sir, can I have some more? And they have the absolute audacity to tell us, oh, we're going to give you, when a man's on the dole because he can't find a job, we're going to give you a bonus payment. Guys, a bonus is something you get surplus to requirement. Bonus is extra. If you're not paying a man enough on the dole just to get by, and often I go without food, and I'm applying for disability. I have 2 gammy hips, 2 slip discs, 2 damaged rotator cuffs, linea alba tear, rectus abdominis split. My body's not good for labour. So a man that's fit can go back to work or whatever, but a man in my condition, I'm not fit for work. So that's why I've applied for disability. But I go without food some weeks. Because they pay us that little. I don't even get rent allowance here. So I'm minus 60 to the average guy in Ireland, who's already not getting paid enough. Now take another 60 quid off somebody and see how they do. So I go without food. And if I need anything done like dentistry, I have to put my hand out to somebody. And then I'm spending months paying it back. And they're kicking us out of the dentists so that the teeth are falling out of our heads. Because we have a medical card. That's not acceptable in Ireland. You can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of their association. You can't chuck them out of your business. That's against my rights. And now there's bone loss in my mouth because somebody took it upon themselves to kick all the medical card holders out of their dental practice. It's foul. But it's at that local level now. They shamelessly just chuck you out like you're nothing. Next time they see you, you'll be, how's it going? Are you well? It's nice to see you. How's the family? Pfft, medical card holder. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's the same attitude with Tesco. Tesco are saying, unless you take the club card, Tesco club card, you can't get the same price that everybody else is getting who has the Tesco club card. What? That goes against my statutory rights. Now, it's easy to laugh about the guy in the bullring who's talking about the Tesco club card. Sounds funny, right? What's your man going on about the Tesco club card for? What's your man going on about getting kicked out of the dentist for having a medical card? That's easy. You can do that about anything. Listen to what's being said. If you take somebody out of a dental practice because he has a medical card, you're saying I discriminate against you on the basis of your associations. You're discriminating against me for associating with my own government? How is this possible? When I have the right to association? When you can't discriminate against me on the basis of my associations? You can't kick me out of your dental practice lawfully for having a medical card. Like you can't kick me out of Tesco for not having Tesco club card, or overcharge me. Or are you saying you're undercharging the people who have the club card? I'm not gathering this. Because you're either overcharging me or undercharging them. And both would be bad for our economy. The sale of produce has to reflect the cost of operations, the cost of production in your local area. What would it cost to produce this in Ireland? Somebody said, well, you couldn't produce it in Ireland. We don't have the infrastructure. Rest my case. So here you are de-skilling Irish people, turning them into couch potatoes, and they're not even getting their potatoes from Ireland. So that they're not even capable of feeding themselves. So now the paddy doesn't have a spud. Somebody will say, there are people producing potatoes. Shouldn't I buy potatoes off Johnny up the road there? No, we have to have an assessment of how many Johnnies up the road we need to produce our own food. Or Frank or Mary or Susie or whatever. Because you can be a farmer if you're a woman as well. So why don't you teach people to be farmers instead of paying them not to be farmers? Incentivizing people not to farm with subsistence check. We'll give you what we give the lad on the dole, maybe a bit more if you don't farm. Why would any government use taxpayers' money to pay people not to build infrastructure? Because they're trying to rape you. They're trying to rape you and enslave you and remove your sovereignty by presenting convenience so that you'll trade sovereignty for convenience. Which is folly. By the sweat of thy brow thou shalt eat, thou shalt live. So if you're not living by the sweat of thy brow, thou art a slave unto another. And you're a slave to the low-paid Indians and Chinese. You're their slave. It's only a matter of time before that manifests. So you need to understand what's happening here, because you're being kept by the low-paid worker in India or China or Taiwan, or they're keeping you. You're in their house. Do you understand how it works now? So they determine how much you get paid. And right now they're paying you more than themselves, but how long will that last if you don't take your house back? But they're not paying you more than themselves relative to their own location. That's why you don't have enough houses. You haven't even a house to live in. And you still think you're winning because you've got all this Tesco garbage. And it's garbage. A lot of that stuff in Tesco clearance aisle is garbage. That's why it ended up in the clearance aisle. So take your country back, Ireland. Teach your children what they need to do to take their country back. We've enough IT workers. Sure, that industry's designed to look after itself. How many people work in Tesco? Tesco services 10,000 people. 20,000 people, 30,000 people. And there's 10 people working there. They're hardly supporting the local economy, are they? They're hardly a great contributor to Ireland. 10, 15 people working in Tesco at any one time. And they're servicing in the tens of thousands a day. Just think about it. An Aldi in the thousands. And there's 5 people working there. They've got that thing on lockdown. If they close their door, you'd starve. Then everybody's running to the local farmer and he's saying, well, if I had known, if you had been buying from me, I would have been able to produce more food. I've been shouting at you. Build your farms. Build your houses. The Bull McCabe there. That's my field. Sorry, Bull, we need it. We need farms. Out of my face. This is Ireland. You can't stop us building houses. Here's a fair price for the field. Can't be sitting looking at it. And a good fair price. Lads are paying triple in monthly rent what they would be paying if banks gave them a mortgage. And the banks are refusing them a mortgage. That's criminal. Are you a bank or not? And if you're not, close your doors and let somebody else do it. And that's the approach Irish people need to take now, before it's too late. Take your country back, Ireland, and be an example to the world. Chucking a few quid in a donations box every now and again Thinking that you're being charitable to other nations when you're not even building your own country is preposterous. You've got to have a front door before you can open it to other people. They're not even letting you build your house. They're keeping you chasing your own tail. Enough's enough. We won't chase their tail anymore. We don't have to listen to their story. Learn what should be happening. Learn your constitution. Implement it. Hold them accountable. That's it. Your president saying, I'm not accountable to your courts if I'm found in misconduct, then he should be in jail. He should be in jail. A president saying, I'm not answerable to your courts, is a president that refuses to submit to the authority he claims to wield himself. That's a warmonger. That's a warlord, a tyrannical dictator. Even though he hasn't lifted a finger with a weapon, he is actively opposing the Irish people and the arm of their law. The court. If I'm found in misconduct, I'm not summoned to your court. Who are you then? You're above Irish law? Even the kings of old weren't above the law. They'd lose their heads too, you know, if they opposed the law. Or what they said, the words of their own mouths. So we're really looking at Michael D. Higgins in an old world would be in danger of being decapitated for what the legislation surrounding his office is now claiming. Because he's the custodian of the Constitution, he has to make sure that nothing is in there that shouldn't be in there in the writings. And he's saying, well, if I'm found in misconduct now, I'm not answerable to your courts. Before God of heaven, that's not true. Every man in Ireland is answerable to the courts of Ireland, especially one in misconduct. They can be summoned by the Irish people. But they're claiming, no, we can't, because there's legislation that says that. Oh, who wrote that? So they're trying to do all of these crimes, hide them from you, lead you around by the nose, thinking you're winning for all the low prices and stuff. Oh, Temu. Yeah, you give your money to Temu Ireland. Then where is it? You give your money to the internet. Then where is it? Build your country before they kick you out of it. And they're effectively doing that because they're telling you you can't afford to have babies. Will you wake up? On my side now. So before it's too late, Ireland, get up off your hands. And anybody who tells you not to use them, take them by the scruff. Because otherwise they'll take you by the scruff. Blessings in Jesus' name. There are laws instituted by God. Stand on them.